Hello, everybody. Now, this is a change. It's just me on the screen. Stephen is away today. By the way, I thought I'd show you all. Happy Friday to everyone who's joining us for Wow Ergonomics. For anyone that's listening to this, by the way, I apologise for this next section, but I thought I'd show you a bit of my studio when it's actually set out for the music. But there we are. And all I do, very simple ergonomic trick here, is I have music on one side and then I swing this round. It's on wheels, and suddenly it becomes much more boring and plain because we're going to talk about workplace, office, and ergonomics for the next 40 minutes or so. I'm now going to be joined by the wonderful special guest of today, Maritsa.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's Maritsa, not Martisa.
Maritsa, what did I say? I
Hello.
can't even remember. My brain isn't
Don't
working.
worry.
It's Friday.
Not many people pronounce it correctly, so yeah, you did well to try. Thanks.
Thank you so much. How are you?
Good, thank you. How about you?
I'm okay. It's cold, and I prefer it when it's a little bit warmer. I'm trying to stay warm at home without putting the heating on, because it costs an absolute fortune, doesn't it? And anybody that's listening that is in the same predicament, trying to work from home at the moment. I mean, it's lovely for anybody that's in an office. You're probably getting heated, and it's one reason why maybe some people ought to go back to offices, because maybe there's going to be a lot of people very cold this winter working at home. But there you go.
Have you not got your hot drink? What have you got a hot drink there? That's always a good one.
I've got a cold hot drink. So to explain to people what a cold hot drink is, it starts off hot, then you don't drink it because you're busy working, and then it gets cold. So I'm doing everything wrong this morning in terms of looking after myself and well-being. Although I have just gone to put the kettle on, didn't quite make it in time. You're from the world of HR.
I am, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what it is you do and what's happening in the world of HR at the moment.
Oh, wow. Well, so so I've been in HR for 20 years now or so. Always been in HR. Didn't think I was going to get into it, but I did after a university placement. So I've been for the past however long, 17 of those years, I was in corporate side, so working within businesses as the HR person. And about 3 years ago, I decided to set up my own business, providing HR consultancy. So the general HR stuff that you see consultants working on, going into businesses, maybe doing things like contracts, helping with interviewing or setting up their recruitment process or setting up their HR team. More recently, though, I'm focusing on helping businesses to stop their best people from leaving. So I'm working with business owners, CEOs, MDs, founders to really sort of tackle that problem when they have high attrition or turnover, and yes, to retain their people.
Okay, so what is the main problem with people leaving? And we heard a lot in the middle of COVID about the Great Resignation, etc. Actually, just for a start, did the Great Resignation actually really happen?
I believe that it did. I think a lot of people, especially where they felt that like they weren't supported, where perhaps their managers and leaders had to shift between managing people in an office to managing people that aren't there and aren't in front of them. They focused on presenteeism rather than productivity. I think, yes, it did happen. And, the stats say that it did as well.
Yeah. Okay. And it's interesting you created your business 3 years ago because that was right in the center of the storm, as it were. What was it about that time that made you think this is the time that I need to set this up?
It wasn't something about the time, it was more circumstance.
Right.
So
That was right
my
for
husband
you.
and I, Yeah, absolutely. So, after spending however many years of my life in living in the UK, I emigrated to Greece with my husband and our three dogs, and it seemed that it would be. I was missing HR. I hadn't thought that I was going to be doing what I do now. I was missing doing that work and working with businesses and helping them succeed. And so yeah, I just kind of thought, well, let me just carry on doing this, see how it can go. Obviously, a lot of people were working remotely at the time, and yeah, it's going very, very well. So
Well, then you got the best of all worlds. You got the better weather for a start. You know,
yeah, it's
you
stormy today. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
okay. And actually, compared with some of the guests that we have on here who are based in the UK, you seem to have incredibly good Wi-Fi as well, which says a lot for UK Wi-Fi, doesn't it? Um,
Yeah.
so, you know, working with companies around the whole area of retention, what are the main reasons that you're seeing skills people leave work?
Yeah, so I feel like I bang on about this a lot, but typically there's something usually what wrong with the work that they're doing, the reward, and that doesn't just mean pay, the company, and also the behaviors. So the stuff that I was saying about, managers not being able or not knowing how to manage people remotely, as one example. But yeah, typically it falls into those kind of 3 to 5 categories. So the work, the reward, processes that don't support them, the company, like the culture, the values just might be completely mismatched, and just the mindset and behaviors that are there. So that's kind of what I work with businesses to address, the foundations, which I call them. So some of the what, what is happening and what happens to a person and through their journey with that company, along with the how. So how that stuff happens. So how is it that actually my manager assesses my performance, or how am I brought into the company and things like that.
Uh, One of the reasons I wanted to get you on is because we've talked quite a lot on this program about the whole well-being piece and how
Mm,
that fits into it, and also the kind of onboarding piece as well. And we'll talk about that in a
mm.
minute. But it, how high up the agenda is kind of well-being for a lot of the people that you work with?
Um, It really depends. I think what I see more is that people want to do the right thing. You sometimes get those who just think, "Oh my God, it's too expensive. Can't even consider." But people do want to do the right thing. They just don't know what they can do and what's available. And again, like, there's this presumption that it's going to be really, really expensive, and it's not. It's something like well-being doesn't need to cost anything. It can just be, going back to behaviors, managers being equipped and knowing how to ask if someone's okay, and how to handle when they get a response that actually isn't what they'd be expecting.
Mhm.
It can be something that's that simple, but actually that can be really, really effective, and it helps to build relationships and all those things, and can potentially help that individual that's not feeling all that great.
Yeah. Well,
So yeah.
what we've kind of ruminated over and discussed, time and time again in the last few weeks on this program is that actually, in a lot of cases, it's about education. Um, Now it is costly because it's costly in terms of people's time,
Hmm.
and it also, I guess, there is a cost in terms of getting the right people into your business to provide that education as well.
Hmm.
But it doesn't necessarily stack up that it's all about buying in, particular solutions, etc. It is about kind of knowing, though, so that you can actually act. And
Yeah.
that's where a lot of it falls down at the moment, because actually what we see from sort of the ergonomic sector is a lot of people actually will spend the money on the products, but they often get the wrong products or they get the wrong service, etc., and they
Mm.
don't get the solutions that they want because they won't spend the time and they won't spend money on the education side of things.
Yeah.
Do you see that kind of playing out in terms of other areas as well?
Yes, I do. And I was going to say two things actually. One, I would argue just about the sort of the solution and the education piece. I would argue that it shouldn't just be seen as the initial outlay of like time and money. If you are going for the right solution, there'll be that compound value. So it's a skill that somebody learns and then develops as they use that. So, for example, I've done a mental health first aid course and I did my refresher a couple of years after. I think I'm due my next one next year. And yes, okay, there was an initial cost and, you know, what have you, but that the value that I gathered from that is still giving today. So I think there's that perhaps short-sightedness of businesses where they don't necessarily see with education. They just think, oh, it's a one-off, it's a tick box, and they often don't think about the compound value. The second piece as well is that, yeah, I've seen certainly in businesses where they might implement, say, for argument's sake, a private medical scheme, but actually that's just because they think that it's what people want, but they don't actually know that. And it might be that the people who used to be in that business 3 to 5 years ago might have wanted it, but actually the people that are there now would value something else, or something else to complement, or having a choice. And so there's that lack of, I guess, gathering feedback about what people need. You know, you might go and spend, from an ergonomics perspective, you might go and spend a whole load of money on a really expensive chair, but actually if that's not what the person needs and they could benefit from something else instead, before you then go and spend thousands on a really, you know, a really decent chair that's going to assist your posture, when actually you could have contributed maybe to some physio sessions or some massage therapy or acupuncture, something like that. You know, again, it's that thing of, oh, we'll just do that because we think it's okay, and that's
Yeah,
what I'm thinking.
yeah. I you know, from the perspective of having spent a lot of time over 20 odd years doing it myself, I mean, you know, what became abundantly clear is that the the conversation started at the wrong place, and it was, you know, almost the power was put into the wrong hands, because ultimately if you ask people in a situation who are going through pain, or if you ask people, you know, at the coalface, what is it that you need from, you know, in terms of well-being or whatever, who haven't had any kind of education in that, they don't really know. So
Yeah,
they try and grapple with it the best they possibly can and go, oh, I don't know, I think I need this, or I, you know,
yeah,
maybe this will work. And so then
yeah,
that just creates this chain of improper solutions being put into place, because someone then goes, oh, well, they tell me that that's what they need, so now we'll go and do a little bit of research, try and find something, throw that in, see if that's gonna, you know, sort the situation out. And
yeah.
for me, it's, you know, a lot of this is about dialogue.
Mm,
um you know, I just think a lot of what's missing all the way along the line is proper dialogue.
yeah,
And it's more kind of like management, as you say, going, what do we need to do in this area? Oh, okay,
mm,
let's put something into place and tick the boxes, as opposed to let's really get to know our people. Because if we actually start dialogue with them and we start to really understand what it's like, you know, out there doing
yeah,
this or doing that, then
yeah,
we can find where the holes are, and then we can actually,
yeah,
you know, then we can find the people that need to come in, look at those spaces and go, actually, you might want to look at this, you might want to look at that, and this is
yeah.
what you need to put into place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely agree there. I think there's a lot of, also there's a lot of, and I think that the NHS doesn't particularly help, but that's a whole other conversation for another time. But the whole like treating the symptom rather than actually getting to the root cause of the problem. But then with some MSKs, musculoskeletal issues, you don't necessarily know, because they just try and treat the pain rather than find out what the cause is. And so then I guess from a ergonomics perspective, if you don't have a proper diagnosis, you can't always give the right solution,
No,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But anyway, yes, so that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I think that piece around the dialogue just isn't always there, and there's just assumptions. And so for example, I see this with some of the clients that I speak to, or the people who I speak to before they become clients, is that they'll think it's one thing, and actually it's a completely different thing. So the classic for some of the people who I speak to is, our people aren't saying, because they're just not cut out for startup life. They can't handle the fast pace, the ambiguity, things like that. But actually, that's not necessarily what the problem is. So yeah, I would agree that it's something that I'm seeing quite a lot as well.
So what are some of the things that you work through with organisations in terms to try and put things right in terms of stopping people going?
Yeah. Yeah, so the first two things for me are knowing the size of the problem and understanding what the problem is. So understanding what their turnover percentage is, and understanding the data behind that, because it's all very well having a percentage, but that means nothing. Especially when you can't compare. It's wrong to compare percentages between businesses. So yeah, finding out really the exact reasons, or as much as you can, what's going on, getting feedback from the people, from based on their experience, and then really depending on that, I then work to implement solutions, again, focusing on that what and how. The second part, which is probably the most important part, is the how piece. And that happens, a lot of it happens early on with like CEO, MD, founder level, and the C-suite as well, on working on those behaviors and the thoughts, feelings, mindset behind what's going on. Explaining what the issue is, and then working together for me to challenge some of that thinking and say, actually, it's not the fast-paced startup life. It's the fact that you brought them in, didn't really tell them what they're expected to do, and then just left them and didn't really help them to be successful in that role. But yeah, that's just one example. So yeah, so working on that mindset stuff and explaining a bit around what I'm seeing, what the reality is, and then setting up the next steps really to work through that. So working through that making sure the process, so from the minute somebody applies for a role to the minute they leave, are really, really slick and supportive, and also that there's experienced or knowledgeable managers who can help to have conversations about ergonomics, or to have conversations about what development looks like, and those kinds of things. They know how to hire, they know what role to hire for, and they're not just going, I think we need one of these, but actually what they really need is something else. So yeah, that's in a very brief nutshell.
No, it totally makes sense. Do you think that one of the things that has really kind of pushed the problem on in recent years is the fact that we've, the change in work, or the change in work practices, etc. The fact that we've now got this, these perhaps different models of work. Although I'm not a massive favour of the term hybrid, for example, because I'm fairly certain that it's a management based term that actually is there to try and create a structure around something which ought to be flexible. But
Yeah.
with the fact that we've got more people wanting to choose home and home and office, different ways of working, etc., is part of this what is causing the problems for management at the moment, because they're still having to find those ways of managing in a different way.
Yeah, I think so. So I think so one of the things that I also hear that leaders say is that, people are so demanding, they want to work from home in their PJs. And I can see that is happening. The pandemic had a huge impact on us as humans refocusing what our priorities are. And so, yes, people's attitudes as job seekers, let's say, have changed, and they are demanding a bit more. I think what's happening at the moment is that there's a little bit of this, like, oh, it's not happening, I don't want to deal with it, which is all very well, but I don't. And there's a lot of this forced return to office stuff going on as well. And that could work in the short term, but I think the long term challenge will still be there, that people want to be able to work more flexibly where they can. The pandemic proved that we can have meetings. Yes, it comes with some downsides, the social interaction. As human beings, we need to be with people, and all of those things. But to your point, when managers know and they have taken the time to educate themselves, and businesses to educate their leaders on how they can do that successfully, I think that's where the magic happens. And I think there's a lot of this, I'm just going to ignore it, hope it goes away, force people back into the office, it's what we need to do. So yeah.
I found one of the things you said a few minutes ago about it's not about the metrics in a way. It's about actually understanding the real reasons why, and then
Yeah.
implementing real solutions of how.
Yeah.
I found that quite interesting because I one of the things I'm hearing is, oh, we've done this now that we've had 2 or 3 years of experience now of things like hybrid work, for example. We've done a white paper, we've got the stats, etc., and now we understand. Now we're beginning to understand, how companies want to work, and therefore this is what we're now trying to implement. And for me, I think that's missing something. I really think it's kind of missing the human element at a granulated level,
Mm.
because you know yes, if you go across an organization and you put out a straw poll or whatever, you're going to get some figures back. I want to work this way, I want to work that way. But I partly think it's problematic because I think polls are problematic, which may sound weird because I do a poll every morning on LinkedIn. But one of
Love
the
your polls.
But one of the reasons that I do my polls is to put in a way to prove that sometimes polls don't work, because like I did this morning, actually the bit that people were voting on had absolutely nothing to do with the actual,
Mm.
post bit itself. And because I think actually people don't dive into the proper data.
Yeah.
So
There's a piece for me as well, and maybe this is the slight grammar obsessive in me, that um, I sometimes look at polls, like not just the odd like Facebook or LinkedIn poll, but some quite like big surveys, and I think, well, hang on, that question is worded in a completely not objective way, and it's quite leading. And also where I see sometimes they try, I was always taught when I was doing stuff at uni to try and have if you're going to ask to what extent, you should have a 5-point scale, not a 4-point scale, and be very, very clear on what they are. And you see these things, and so I question, yes, the level to which there's been investigation and sort of real delving into that data, but I question also how the questions are question how the questions are phrased, but you know what I mean. It's
yeah,
that,
are they
how are
leading
the
questions
questions
that are
written?
leading to an answer that you want to hear in the
Yeah,
first place anyway?
yeah,
So
yeah. Or are
I
they just not set up to be really, really clear as well? So yeah.
Yeah, but in the reality of it, it's like when I see things on, and I don't know whether you see things like this from various people in the HR sector on LinkedIn, where it's like, should we have a 4-day working week? And I always want to comment on those posts because a poll like that to me, out of any kind of context, without any kind of real sort of thought about where that question's going just doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I, I've got so many more questions that come from that question. It's like, well, what day off?
Are we now?
What day?
Are we now saying to school teachers you should do a 4-day
Yeah.
working week so that
Yeah. Yeah.
actually,
Yeah. Yeah.
where do our kids get educated
And
for
how does
50?
it and how does it work for those people who don't work regular 9 to 5 office jobs? All of those things. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I just think, having done it myself, I just think as well that the answer's going to be different. And this is what makes it hard for organizations as well. Okay. But the answer's going to be different for every single person you
Yeah.
ask,
Yeah.
because, when COVID happened, when everybody went home to work, when everybody was forced into that situation, out of that, the lifestyles that developed out of that, or the thought about what does work mean to me, are so varied now, because for James over there, he's now discovered that actually this works, and his pattern that he developed might have been, well, actually I'm going to look after the kids at home Tuesday and Wednesday, and I'm going to do the school run then, and my wife's changed role and she's doing this, or and it's that pattern will be different for every single
Yeah.
person that's out there.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that people forget, both from the business side but also as an employee, is that nobody can please everyone all of the time. But what I help businesses to do is to understand that, okay, we can't do that. And, but what we can do actually is we can make sure that we've asked the questions, we've sought feedback. Where there's individual cases where, for example, you've got people who want to go and pick their kids up from school, or where their partner's working night shift, whatever it might be, that you understand those and try where possible to say, okay, well, what is the piece that can't change for us as a business? What do we need operationally to continue, and what are the bits that actually we can be flexible on? And
Yeah.
that's, I think, the bit that's missing. I think also a little bit what's happened is that, because during the pandemic we were forced into this state of like having to just continue, like business continuity, and everyone just went, well, do what you can, just make sure you're doing your work. Now it's a little bit of that thing of like reining it in a little bit. It's like, when I'm not a parent, but I would imagine it's that thing of you kind of spoil your kids a little bit and then they get used to it, and it's like trying to rein in that behavior. Yeah.
Who do you think's taking the brunt of all of this at the moment? Do you think it's mid-level management? Are they the ones that are trying to firefight at the moment and try and you know keep everybody happy? Because in a way, what they've got is they've got this kind of maybe not enough structure and understanding from C-suite
Mm,
at the top, and then they've got people that they're trying to manage who are saying,
mm.
yeah, but I want to work in my pajamas. But actually, this would be really good for me. I've discovered this is really good for me. And the person next to them is
Yeah.
going, yeah, but hang on, that's not fair. Why, you shouldn't be doing that. And they're trying
Yeah.
to just manage all of this. Is it kind of middle level management
I
that are
think, I think, yeah. So I think the worst affected, let's say, are middle managers. I think, or people managers in general. So not sort of directors or board level or C-suite. Um, what I have seen throughout my career is that managers typically aren't educated, or when I say educated, I mean training, whatever it might be, on how to manage people. You will typically find that people are promoted based on their technical skill and ability, which is fantastic because you want somebody who's a subject matter expert, great. But then it goes back to that thing about not equipping someone to be successful. And so when it comes to managing one person, they might be okay, they might muddle through. They've then got a bigger team. Again, they're kind of like muddling through. They might go and do a little bit of reading. They might try and educate educate themselves, do a bit of self-paced learning, whatever it might be. Then you've got like bigger teams and you're like, oh shit, you know, is this working? And then you've got the pandemic and you're like, oh my God, this has completely changed what my known world is and how do I cope? And I think there's still that hangover of not having taken the time to properly or not prioritizing how to properly manage asynchronously. You know, before I was supporting clients in different offices and different time zones to me for I've been doing it for about, let's say, over 10 years. So it's something that was happening before, where people, leaders, managers had teams that were based in different offices to them, different countries. But I think what used to happen was there was a bit of muddling through and there wasn't this focus. And also the piece around the demands have changed. Do you see what I mean? So there's a couple of things that have played their part. But yeah, I think it hasn't been prioritized for people to sort of think, okay, well, what do I need to do differently now that actually we're being more flexible with people's time? We're focusing more on productivity rather than presenteeism. How do I need to change my management style? And what do I actually need to look out for that is different to what I used to do before?
Do you
So,
think
yeah.
technology's been sort of helpful, but also maybe a bit of a hindrance in all of this? Because thinking back to you know, when COVID started, etc., and then suddenly, you know, there was a mass kind of education that went on, which was like, oh yeah, I've used Zoom maybe once or twice in my life, or I've occasionally dived into Teams or whatever, but never really used it. And now it's like, you know, everybody's okay and au fait with those kind of technologies. But it was almost like, technology will save us. We've got these technologies. We can work remotely now, etc. We can sort of implement this across our team, push them out there, and now everybody can work. We can do this asynchronous, synchronous working bit because we've got these technologies. But
Yeah, I
but
think,
actually, nobody was necessarily looking at the process. They were just going, well, we've got the technology. I mean, we saw examples. For example, we had assessors come on here and talk about workplace assessors who were seeing people on a regular basis, and one of the things that was coming up on a regular basis was, yeah, since I've started working from home, etc., I've been given Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting, and there's like nobody that no one's even allowing me time in the day to think or go to the
do
toilet or
do
whatever
my
else,
work. Yeah,
or yeah, or even do my work. I you know,
yeah,
I've got so much work that I haven't got time to do any work. You know, I mean,
yeah,
it almost seemed to me like people pushed to the technology and went,
yeah.
great, the technology's going to solve it, without thinking, let's stop for a minute and think about what do the people need, what are the processes that they require, you know,
Yeah,
let's give them some
yeah,
instruction.
yeah. I think you're right there. Actually, I think it's very much like, the technology lets us do it. So surely everyone can just jump on board and just be in meetings back to back. Couple of things on that. I saw I was going through randomly an old iProduct that I had. I wanted to start doing a bit of reading electronically, and I was looking through my old photos, and I'd taken a screenshot of what my typical day looked like when I was working in an office for a big company, and the back-to-back meetings existed then as well. I think the difference is that, well, that wasn't okay. I'm not saying that at all. I think the difference is that you get some more of the human cues, don't you, when you're like, when somebody's really, really tired, or when they, you know, it was more acceptable, I think, back then to say, look, you know, I'll be here in a minute, I just need a comfort break or whatever it might be. Whereas now I feel that when you're joining it, you kind of have to be there full attention, as if you're in an office with someone. And I think where you've got that back-to-back thing going on, that it can put a lot of pressure on people. And just because the technology means that we can do it, we can, that's the other thing, is that we're all available in theory 24/7, right? So just because we can doesn't mean that we should. And definitely that piece around forgetting the human aspect behind that Zoom call or whatever it might be. And again, that goes back, some of it goes back to the whole behaviors thing. It's like being setting boundaries and being protective of your time is okay. And it's just knowing how to do that in a way that means that you're not dropping stuff, or not being rude to someone, but just saying, look, I can't do then, but I could do this instead. So I think it's not just the managers that have to, that they have to examine that mindset and perhaps make some changes. I think it's everyone in general, because you always hear about people who are saying, oh, I'm always on my phone if it rings, or if it, it might be a personal call, not even anything work related. I was speaking to my sister-in-law the other day. She was like, I'm really, really sorry I haven't replied. And it's like, it's okay. You don't expect to reply straight away. But I think because the technology is there, there's this subconscious pressure that's applied. And I'm not sure that we're as individuals good at managing.
I think I think the technology providers are to blame slightly. Don't all throw rocks at once, but because
he said it, not me.
because I've, and to be fair to them, I think they do help, or those technologies do help solve a lot of the problems. But they realised very quickly that they could solve a lot of the problems in terms of communication, etc. And they very quickly changed the language or the narrative around what they were selling to fit into the equation that was there, and say, oh, this tool will help your organisation be asynchronous. Yeah. And so management must have been looking at that going, brilliant. Now we buy this, we put this into place. We're now an asynchronous.
Magic.
Look at that. That's all sorted. But
that's
like
me buying a piano and saying I can play the piano now. I'm a skilled pianist.
Exactly that. Exactly that. But at the same time, I think I don't think it's any coincidence that whilst all of this has been happening, the conversation around mental health, the conversation around neurodiversity, the conversation around inclusion and accessibility, all of those conversations, the conversation around well-being, burnout has increased, because actually we haven't got it right. And we clearly haven't got it right, because people have, I think everybody that you speak to is busier. Their day has less hours. And it's nothing to do with the fact that the moon is, although it is something to do with the fact that the moon is getting further and further away from us. But it's actually to do with the fact that we are more connected, we are more on all of the time, and people are expected to kind of be on all of the time. And we're not finding ways in which to just give people time. And I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago on here, and I'd love to know your kind of viewpoint on it. Do you ever talk to businesses about just giving people time? Because it seems in the modern kind of digital age that we kind of forget that when we disseminate information to people, or when we task people with things, or when we set things, we just expect them to get on, right? And for some people that might be fine, but for other people, they actually need a moment. They need a moment for that information to really sink in. They might need to talk to someone else about it in order to really understand it fully, or know where to take that in order to get the best out of them.
Mm.
And I think we're beginning to not give people that time, and that's a
Mm.
mistake.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I think going back to the piece that you said about asynchronous working as well, because a lot of that is around being able to have those discussions when you're not both in the same room, let's call it. There's that thing where and again, you don't see the person's reaction. But I think there's a lot of focus, and because everyone is busier on going, hey, here's this thing I need you to work on. This is what the deliverables are in an ideal world. This is what I'm expecting, blah, blah, blah. And it needs to be done by X. But what really should also happen is what's your capacity like? Is this feasible? Let's see if there's other things that we can drop for you to be able to complete this. I really need you to complete this rather than Harry over there. That's kind of, and I don't think it's happening. And I think, again, technology is not helping with that, because we're just going, okay, this is what I want. You're sending that out to the ether if the person's not online at the time, and you think that you've been clear, but actually what you then haven't done is checked whether they've got the time and the capacity to do it. And then once you know if they have got the time and the capacity, how can you help them to then say, okay, what can we pause, what can we give away, what can we delegate, to free up some of your thinking time as well as actual doing time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's time, capacity, and also comprehension.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is a massive thing, because how
Yeah.
much time is wasted within organisations because really the brief isn't understood fully, or
Yeah. I
you
was going
know,
to say that I don't think, and it's unfair to tar everyone with the same brush, but I question how many people managers or leaders, anyone that is basically trying to delegate a task would actually go that extra piece and do what I mentioned, the checking and sort of helping to free up the time. I don't know that happens. Like, from my experience, I'm not sure that happens that much, and so I can only imagine that it's just gotten worse with technology.
yeah.
Um,
It's interesting actually, because I was having this conversation earlier in the week with someone that provides train the trainer
mm,
qualifications, and uh, there seems to be, slowly but surely, there seems to be a little bit of a pickup on that at the moment, which I'm quite pleased about. And I think one of the reasons for that is because I think some organisations that are getting it are beginning to realise as well that in those dialogue moments that you do actually need people trained in teaching or
yes.
trained in training,
Yes.
not just management. Kind of
Yes.
pure management skills aren't going to cut it enough,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
actually, if you're going to delegate, are you understanding your audience? Are you understanding that Joe in your team might need this explained in a slightly different way,
Yeah.
because the way that they absorb or learn information, or assimilate that information, is different from
Yeah.
next to them. And you know those kind of skills, maybe those kind of skills need to come more into management as well going forward. Do you
I
think
would
that's
agree. Yeah, I would 100% agree. Just even just thinking that, thinking about things like dyslexia, potentially dyspraxia, autism, or any kind of neurodivergence. It's kind of, I don't think we know enough about it ourselves. And I certainly don't think there's that emphasis placed on people managers to know how, and look, it's difficult to know everything about everything. You won't be able to, and some of it is that it goes back to that dialogue and checking back and making sure that you've allowed the time for that person to understand. Do they feel comfortable to come to you and ask questions, or to say, do you know what, I actually really don't get this, and or actually I forgot to ask you this question, or even something as simple as that, it's just making sure. I think what is key in those scenarios, if you don't know how somebody might want to receive that information, is just checking with them. Somebody would appreciate it far more if they're being asked, do you get, is there anything else that I can help with? Do you feel comfortable coming back to ask me all of those things? But yeah, I'm not.
And that comes back
From
down to
experience, I think, yeah.
and that comes back down to developing from the top really good company culture,
Exactly.
where nobody feels scared to go, no, I don't understand.
Absolutely.
I need more help with this, because
Yeah.
if you don't have that
It's,
culture, or you have a competitive culture within your culture, then people won't say yes.
yeah. It's that making space for people to be vulnerable, and it being okay to do that, and without any judgment, and without any fear of repercussions or anything like that. Yeah, I think that's hugely important, and I'm not sure that we're there yet.
No. I can give you some really good examples of that. I once went into a bank, and I was actually dealing with a situation with a cashier, and what the line manager didn't understand was that this person, they did a shout out every morning. So they did a shout out of what they expected from that day from each of their
Mm.
staff, etc. And this person could just not absorb verbal information, right?
Mm.
He just went like that, you know. Um, and once I showed them that actually, if they just took bullet points from what they were shouting out and put them on a piece of paper and gave it to
Mm.
that person could deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just as simple as that. That you know,
Yeah.
for some people, and for some people, it's the other way around. Some people, if you give them written instruction, they just won't get it. Give them it verbally. So sometimes it's just about providing things in different ways for different
Yeah.
groups of people.
Definitely. And I think it goes back to the piece that we were talking about sometimes business leaders and businesses in general worry that it's got to be an expensive solution, but it doesn't have to be. It can be really, really simple. If you can ask it, the most important thing is to ask, how do you like to receive information, but that's the thing, going back to what I was saying about the person being onboarded or not, just literally being given their laptop and told to get on. When what I would say a successful manager would be doing is having that discussion about, how can I help you to be successful? Is there anything I need to know? How do you like to receive it? Those kinds of things. Yeah. And also then thinking about, talking about your example, I wonder to what extent that supervisor at the bank had even thought about whether or not they're on autopilot and actually just sounding really different, sounding like speaking really, really quickly, and perhaps just not just talking like conversationally, but just reading off a script almost that's in their mind, um, and how that's not the best way that people can understand.
Yeah, bringing it round to finish today onto the sort
Mm.
of onboarding thing. One of the things we've talked about is, where companies have a culture or an ethos and in their values, they're talking about well-being, etc. The idea of giving someone a bottle of wine and a box of chocolates as their induction gift really doesn't cut it, does it? Because that it's not. There's nothing about that says anything about your culture, and there's
No,
nothing in there that actually has a dialogue with the person to find out how you can bring that person in. So
no,
we've been talking to people about you know uh, various apps that you can provide that maybe give help with the cost of living crisis, or can help give people access to physio or counselors, or maybe gym membership or whatever, at the point where they come into the business. And then education, first and
mm,
foremost, kind of dialogue and education as part of that well-being, and induction process to make sure, are there any things that with you coming into the business that are going to help you succeed? Where is your health at the moment? Do you need any help in any particular area? Do you need to know, do you need to, do you need to know something about nutrition? Do you need to know something about this? And let's give you some signposts to the right places to help.
Even as simple as, do you need shorter meetings? Or do you need, do you need to receive information in a different way? How do you want us to communicate together? Yeah.
And
it's so important. So important.
That's important. That's really important. Thank you for
I
coming in.
Oh, you're welcome. I was going to give another example, but it's fine.
No. Let's end on an example. Go for it. What was the example?
Well, it's actually a music example because I know you're into music. So I DJ and I also co-manage an online radio station, and it's relevant in the sense that we're talking about onboarding. But what used to happen before myself and my colleagues started managing the station was that new DJs would come on board. They wouldn't know what the login details are to stream on our server. They'd have to have a look through a text message or whatever. They wouldn't know what the etiquette is for booking in your set, how long you can play for, whatever. And so I said, with Spot, the HR person in the group, I said, we should do a document that has all the information that, we wanted to know when we joined, that people would need. And it is a document. We didn't go to the level of detail that I would say a manager does, because actually what we do is voluntary and there's only so much that we can all create and do. But just having literally like an FAQ of the things that I need to know as a new DJ joining the station, like what is it that, how do we do things around here? And I actually just recently had some feedback from somebody else who plays on another station that they wanted to lift that template and use it there. So I said, yes, of course. But it shows that it's really important. And I've played on various stations where I've just been like, I don't know what my login details are. I don't know what the handover is between the DJ before me and the one after me. None of that. So it's really important, basically, to try someone up for success.
Absolutely. And and if you do that and you have all of that, you get people's names right, and all of that stuff.
Everything. Yeah. Who are the important people that you need to know? That's another thing in business. One of the things that worked really, really well was when in a previous company, we used to set up a few meetings with some key people in the business. Whether it was in the office, the facilities person, or perhaps their VP in their department. Just to start building those relationships, and that really helped as well. But all of those things that should be included and considered to help that person feel at home, cheesy, but
it's not cheesy. Nothing's cheesy. Thank you so much for coming along and
You're
joining
welcome.
me.
Thanks for having me. It's been really cool.
Stephen, you got a lot to live up to next week. You've got a good guest here. We'll be back same time, same place next week with Wow Ergonomics. If you want to catch up on this episode, which seems a bit daft because you just watched it, or any of the previous episodes, you can at wowergonomics.com. Please do share it with anyone you think it might be of interest to. It's available on Spotify as well, so you can safely listen to it whilst travelling around Britain's great car park, the M25. If you find it helpful, do let us know, because we like to get a little bit of feedback. It's great. Thank you so much, Maritsa,
Thank you.
on. And sorry for getting your name wrong right at the beginning.
Right.
And next time I'll be far less flustered, won't I? See you all again next week. Take care of yourselves out there. Bye for now.